get back up again, but
All right, guys, welcome back to Three Tales Told. I'm here, Jason Lavoie here. I'm here with Shane.
How's it going?
Going good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
We just had Canadian Thanksgiving, although this will be posted much later than that. Sean, you there, man?
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going great. It's always good to get together. A couple of guys who don't know too much about history but find good stories. that could be the name of this podcast. A couple of guys who don't know what the hell they're talking about, but make a go of it.
Three guys bullshitting their way through history.
Oh man, too late to change the name. That's great. Shane, you're gonna try and steer this ship away from the iceberg. Have at it, man.
What a way to try to steer a sinking ship away from a friggin' iceberg when we talk about 29th President of the United States of America, Warren G. Harding. For any of you that don't know, Harding was connected to the Teapot Dome scandal, which I will get into here in a second, but I'm just going to kind of lay some groundwork here and kind of bring you up to speed so that you understand why he was such a controversial president. He was actually pretty popular when he was alive, and in a landslide victory, Harding won the largest single popular majority vote in 1920 when he was elected president. His opposition was James M. Cox, and Harding decimated this guy. The previous president, Woodrow Wilson, had suffered a stroke, and he essentially left the government running on autopilot for 6 months during World War I, when inflation was running at 100%, during the temperance movement, and also during Prohibition. So this was a big deal, and people were upset. Women were protesting. People who disagreed with World War I and Wilson were getting thrown in jail. There were labor riots, and the country was pretty much going to tank. And the people wanted to return to normalcy. They wanted things to go back to the way they were before World War I, and they turned to good old boy Republican presidential candidate Warren G. Harding. Now, during his 2.5-year tenure as president, during his first and only term, Harding actually does some good for the country. He fixes the economic mess. He cuts the budget deficit by 1/3. He creates the Office of Management Budget. He creates the Bureau of Veterans Affairs. And he negotiates the treaties that end World War I for America. So, not bad. Unfortunately for Harding, he couldn't handle stress. He had a couple of nervous breakdowns in his life before he was president, and he passed away suddenly from a heart attack while he was touring the country, although some speculate that his wife secretly poisoned him. Yeah, regardless, after his death, this is where the controversy starts. Harding was touring the country towards the end of his life in order to address rising concerns that his political cabinet ministers were being investigated by the government for a number of things. And after Harding died, this is where the Teapot Dome scandal was blown wide open. It revealed that Harding's cabinet ministers were stealing money and oil from the government, and they were taking bribes in order to keep quiet about it. In fact, one of Harding's cabinet ministers, Albert Bacon Fall, was convicted and sentenced to jail for stealing money from the World War I oil reserve and for taking bribes. The cabinet was also exploiting a pharmaceutical loophole during Prohibition that stated a person could buy alcohol from a pharmacy during Prohibition as long as it was for medicinal purposes. So what they did is they handed out false licenses to their friends so that they could run pharmacies in order to supply Harding and his cronies with liquor so that they could basically drink and gamble during Prohibition. And lastly, Harding's promiscuous lifestyle was also revealed to the public, and a number of his mistresses came forward, some of whom were paid to have had abortions and keep quiet about having had sexual relations with Harding, despite the fact that Harding was a married man. One woman, Nan Britton, came forward and said Harding was the biological father of her child Elizabeth, which turned out to be true. And this was something that basically set the temperance movement on fire because Harding actually supported women's rights and their right to vote. So what I want to discuss with you guys is, having heard all this, do you think Harding was an awful president despite pulling America out of World War I, negotiating the treaties that ended the war, fixing the economy, and cutting the deficit, or does he basically deserve the scorn of being remembered as one of the worst presidents in U.S. history? And if he hadn't died suddenly, do you think he would have been able to keep this scandal a secret?
I don't know about worst president in history. I mean, look what's going on right now down there. Honestly, I mean, well, let's call a spade here. At least it sounds like Hardy did something to better the country. You know, what he did off on the side in his own personal life, obviously he wasn't a very good human being, but at least he did something politically.
That's the crux right there, and Sean hit the nail on the head. How are you as a moral person versus how do you run a country? Because, I mean, JFK is one of the greatest presidents probably ever. I think in a lot of people's cases, he's top 10. But he had extramarital affairs and, like, there was some considerably shady dealings with his family and the mob ties and sort of things. But he was a great president. So I think that's what I feel like what Sean's saying. I get what you're saying there, Sean, about, like, good leader, president getting good policies done, and terrible person. And I'm just going to echo the sentiment. I don't, care if I offend people, but yeah, the current president of the U.S. is worse, is terrible on both ends.
Well, that's why I try to make that comparison. Like, you look at him, he's really done nothing politically, and he's a terrible human being.
Yeah.
At least Harding did something politically.
Yeah, that exactly. But I think that, like, scandals that hurt people or scandals that just don't help people but only help themselves, like the Teapot Dome scandal. I mean, that's a big scandal. I mean, that's a known scandal. It's like one of the top presidential scandals of all time. And if he would have kept that going, I don't think he would have. Like, a lot of these guys got skeletons in the closet, and that was definitely one of the most famous scandals ever. And that probably would have been his undoing. And I think in a weird way, he kind of got out a little bit in a good way by dying. It's weird, but like if you think about it, like, think about presidents who die or people who die. Like, look at the mayor of Toronto. I mean, he had all Rob Ford. Remember, he had all those scandals and all those, like, things he did, and he was just he was just a terrible leader. But he died in a really bad way. In a way, it softens the legacy. Do you get what I'm saying?
A little bit, yeah.
Like, people have empathy when you die,
There's something I want to add to this, and it goes to kind of explain why Harding is viewed as one of the worst presidents in U.S. history. And the scandal hurt his legacy quite a bit, as did his extramarital affairs. But Harding actually managed to piss off a journalist called H.L. Mencken. And H.L. Mencken wrote one of the greatest political takedowns in American history. And he basically just ripped Harding a new asshole. And yeah, like he basically said he was like a boob and an ignoramus, and like his speeches were terrible, and how he went up to, I think it was like Alaska or something, and he like kept calling them the people of Nebraska.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, I think, has hurt Harding's legacy more than anything else.
Huh.
And that's not public knowledge, really. So it kind of goes to show like just how the media can have an influence on like what people think of you too. Because when Harding was alive, people really, really liked him as president. And when he died, his body was being returned from wherever he was. I can't remember, but it was being transported by train. And when the train would stop, people would actually come out and pay their respects to the train car that, Harding's body was on. That's how much people liked him. And then when the Teapot Dome scandal kind of came to light, and his extramarital affairs, and H.L. Mencken printing all this stuff, that's, I think, what really hurt his legacy. That being said, there's still people that think he was a good president.
For those who are not familiar too much with American politics and the Electoral College, and how they elect a president, his map is pretty impressive, like his electoral win. Like, basically, he won the entire country except for, like, the southern kind of scoop from Texas to, I guess, Virginia. Like, just the South, which was, the Democrats of the South are a different Democrat back now. Like, it's kind of like they reversed parties. It's really weird. But yeah, like, he had most of the country blocked up for the Republicans. A map that you would never see today, like Washington, Oregon, California, the East Coast with New York, all voting Republican, something you would never, ever see today.
And the numbers are pretty good, too, for Harding. Like, if you look at the numbers of each state that voted, like, his numbers are pretty high.
Was there a big turnout, too?
There was. It was actually it wasn't the most important election in American history, but it was one of them. Because as I said before, like, Woodrow Wilson, like, he had a stroke and he couldn't run the country
They
for a
hid
brief
that.
period of time.
They actually hid that, hey?
Yeah, they did. People didn't know. Like, there were people that actually thought he was kidnapped. Because he wasn't making, like, appearances anymore. They're like, where's President Woodrow?
And didn't he get the Spanish flu as well? I mean,
That I don't know.
We're talking about pandemics. The Spanish flu, which is still probably the most devastating flu in North America, or devastating viral disease in North America. And yeah, Corona's making its way to capturing it. But yeah, like, Wilson got the flu and didn't tell anybody. And I know a lot of Republicans now are using that excuse for when old Donnie Boy there got it, and all the Republicans were making excuses like, well, Woodrow Wilson got the flu and didn't tell anybody. It's like, okay, we're going to make comparisons to post-World War I presidents, okay? Like, what the hell? Not a really good excuse, but yeah, he got the flu as well. So they were a bit, a bit guarded, a little bit, they kept a lid on their presidency there, on their administration.
They kept a lid on a lot of things, too.
Yeah, but I'm kind of glad in some ways, too, Shane, that you brought up, like, the journalism aspect of it, that one journalism calling out Harding, because I think it's changed quite a bit since then, too, where journalists weren't afraid to kind of call guys out, where I think it's not as much that anymore, where people are kind of tiptoeing and afraid to ask the questions. I even go back even to the Nixon years, and you look at guys like Woodrow, who weren't afraid to ask the questions and dig for info.
I think it's kind of the opposite nowadays, actually. I think people were a little softer back then in their journalism as opposed to today. Like, the thing about today, though, is any publicity is good publicity for you. Back then, if you got bad publicity, you were done.
That is true.
To Sean's point, I think nowadays it's like true journalists have to fight this need to be opinionated, because there's so many of these hacks like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, and on the left side, I guess you could say one of my favorites, Keith Olbermann. But like they're opinion journalists in the sense that they say what's on their mind. You know, Lawrence O'Donnell and some of those other guys, they say like how their opinion is. They sometimes use facts to garner their opinion or to see what's outcome, but it's very much based on their political perspective. I mean, Sean Hannity is going to be very pro-Trump, very pro-right-wing, because that is his belief. Whereas a true journalist has to literally take that out of the fray. And the way that the Trump administration has moved the goalposts on like how everything is that doesn't agree with him is considered fake news, it's an unfair label. So when journalists actually present facts, they get labeled a certain political perspective. That's completely unfair, and I feel like now they have to tiptoe, and they have to be like, I have to be as down the road as I possibly can, and that's got to be difficult, because I'm sure like Sean could speak to that. Like, he has to make sure when he writes his story that he's not making it seem like it's leaning one way or the other to try and like force an opinion, and like that's got to be difficult.
It has to be objective rather than biased, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, Jason. And I think that's kind of, exactly kind of the point I was getting. You look at guys like Handy, where they'll take on facts that serve their purpose, but won't ask the questions that might look at the other direction, right?
Exactly.
It's look over here while the other hand's doing something else.
Yeah, they do that old sleight of hand,
Exactly.
Yeah, and that, so like for a journalist to just like lay it out there must have been pretty gutsy back then, because like now, like, you know, there's just so few, like I can barely name any like just straight down the line journalists, and if like they come out and have an opinion, then it's like you kind of listen more. Like I guess Dan Rather would be one. He's very much, you know, I see him on Twitter, and he's not a fan of Trump at all. But man, was he was down the middle. I guess he was. Like, I feel like he was. I didn't really get any sort of bias from him, but some people might disagree with me. But, you know, like some of these older guys, it's like, you know, like they seem like they're down the middle, and, you know, and then when they have an opinion, it's like you listen more. Whereas like nowadays, it's like a lot of these yahoos just make their money on just saying sensationalist crap to get people all riled up one way or the other, right? I mean, on the left side, you have the Young Turks, and then on the right side, like someone like Ben Shapiro. Like, they're all just clowns, really just... They're just entertainers, I suppose. Not so much clowns. They're just entertainers, right? It's the least productive and least talented way to be a journalist. Because, like, Sean, you could just go out there and say your opinion about, say you're covering the Sass Party elections, and you just want to, like, go off on Scott Moe and just talk, like, or you have to present, like, this is what he did, this is what, like, it's so much, like, basically I sum it up, a lie can travel the world before the truth puts its shoes on.
That is very true.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing with an opinion. Opinion can just travel the world before facts get their shoes on.
Do you think people eat up opinionated and biased news more than they do the objective truth? Because when you think about it, it's very much a mob mentality. The same way people look at, like, Star magazine, like the cover of Star magazine, and they got, like, I don't know who they're roasting this week as far as celebrities are concerned, but
Yeah.
people do eat that up.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with our politics.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, Shane. And kind of to your point, Jason, it's hard to bring out the truth because the truth can sometimes take longer to report. Sometimes the truth takes a little bit more digging than just spewing out an opinion, right?
Oh God, yeah. Well, that's a thing about like whenever I see these terrorist attacks and stuff, you know, it's like Twitter and the internet will immediately go on about the guy's political beliefs, his religion, and the truth takes some time. They have to figure out who the guy is who made these attacks and what his and by the time the truth comes out, the lies and the skewing of the of everything, the political opinions have already come out, and it's just a complete or that Jussie Smollett story, right, where he faked his own kidnapping or he faked his attack from so-called Trump supporters, and they weren't really Trump supporters. He just hired a couple of goons to attack him, and like the whole opinion media just jumped in about how Trump supporters are vicious people and all this, and it's not a fair analysis to make at that time. I mean, we can all have our opinions of Trump supporters and so forth. I certainly don't have a high opinion of them, but it was an unfair thing, and the media jumped on it, and it went too quickly. And again, like Sean, to your point, the truth has to marinate. It has to get out there. Like it's a reason why they call it investigative reporting. Like you have to investigate. You have to find those facts. And it's like that's becoming rarer and rarer.
And part of that,
a lot of those facts are hard to find. Like a lot of the truth when it comes to people in high places, they don't want some of that stuff to be found. So you really got to dig and you really got to look to find it.
Yeah.
And especially with the age of social media, it's a competitive atmosphere too. Do you want to be the first to get it out?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be the one to get it right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the one who gets it right ends up looking better, but totally I get your point. It's all about instant gratification, right?
Because who knows if they got it out first and they got it right, then holy crap, we didn't get it out right away. We're behind. But hey, if they're spewing out lies and you got it right and it just took you a little longer, all the power to you. But it's a competitive atmosphere out there.
But it's kind of back to Jay's point where by the time the truth does get out, the damage is already done, and it's almost a wash really at that point because, I mean, people are stubborn and they're going to hold on to their opinions one way or another. It doesn't matter what they hear.
And that goes back to your point, Shane, is are people more in tune to opinion journalism? I think so because, I mean, if you look at Fox News, their daytime programming where they're doing, more or less objective journalism, it's way less ratings than the carnival barkers like Hannity and Tucker Carlson. And same with CNN, Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper are more popular than, the daytime. And I always joke with my wife when we're up really late on a Saturday night with throw on CNN because that's the best time to watch CNN. 3 in the morning. It's like just news. There's no opinion. It's just pure news. It's like, this is kind of a refreshing thing to watch. Like, honestly, CNN at 2 in the morning is honestly not bad to watch because it's actual news. It's actual news. I'm not lying.
Actually, to take that even a step further, those get those ratings because it fits into someone's narrative, right? Yeah. They're saying stuff that people want to believe. So when they're being vindicated, well, great. I want to keep watching.
And I'm definitely like I used to love watching Keith Olbermann on MSNBC. He used to be an ESPN guy, but man, he was so articulate, hilarious. He used to take down Bill O'Reilly and Fox News like every day. He was extremely left wing, but he was hilarious and wildly entertaining. And he had his segment "Worst Person in the World," and I just loved that stuff. Like I thought it was so funny, and it was completely catering to my mentality. And I completely understand that maybe it was over the top sensationalism, but if you can acknowledge that and that, then you're okay. But most people will watch Tucker Carlson and go, this is my news, and his opinion is their news, and it's where they get their opinion from, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, because it vindicates their own opinion.
They now feel justified. Someone has given them carte blanche to justify the way they feel.
And thank you so much, Shane. I know we kind of took it a different way. We kind of talked more about like the media angle of it, but it was a really great story. And yeah, I have to reevaluate the worst presidents because I know people are quick to say Trump is the worst, and I looked at the actual presidents one time and was like, well, like Andrew Johnson post Lincoln, he was pretty awful, and Warren G. Harding came up, and there's a couple others in there, but yeah, no, I still think Trump is the worst. All right, I guess that leaves me. All right, guys, welcome back. I want to talk about the Jersey Shore. No, I'm not going to give you my opinions on Snooki. I'm going to talk about the actual Jersey Shore. This is New Jersey's resort areas, the Atlantic coast of the Jersey Shore. This is July 1916, and I want to talk about the Matawan Maneater. Basically, in July, I believe it was July 1st, 1916, a man named Charles Van Sant was swimming off the coast of Jersey. I think it was I might have called Beach Haven or something like that. And he was attacked. He was attacked by a shark, and he died. He was 25 years old. And he was bit in the torso and the leg, and he succumbed to his injuries. At first, people were like completely confused because they just didn't understand what had happened. And basically, before 1916, people just didn't really think sharks attacked people. In fact, they didn't know of any shark attack at all. There was long tales of the sea and sort of things like that, but there was really no evidence of it, and so this was kind of a surprising thing. Shortly thereafter, I believe this was on July 6th, a man named Charles Broker, I think it's Broker, out in Spring Lake, he was killed by a shark. He was 27. People were thinking maybe it was a killer whale. There was some suggestions that it was a giant sea turtle. Again, people didn't think sharks attacked people. And in fact, the fact that it was a shark was starting to create this frenzy. So much so that the American Museum of Natural History actually had a press conference a few days after that, and basically had three scientists came out and talked about how shark attacks were super rare, and just to try to ease the mind of the people there. Unfortunately, 4 days later, a sea captain named Thomas Cottrell said he spotted an 8-foot shark swimming up the Matawan Creek area, swimming up the creek. He alerted officers, and they ignored his warning. On 2 p.m. The same day, a young boy named Lester Stillwell, 11 years old, was swimming with his friends in the creek and was attacked by the shark. He thrashed for his life, and the boys ran to get an adult, and a man named Stanley Fisher jumped in the water to try and save the boy. Sadly, little Lester died, and Stanley Fisher, the man who tried to save him, was then attacked by the shark, and he succumbed to his injuries. The death toll ended up being about 4 deaths, I believe. A few days later, another teenage boy named Joseph Dunn had his leg bitten almost clean off, just a little bit up from Matawan. So now there's been 5 attacks within 12 days, and people are going insane. Not just in New Jersey, but nationwide. In fact, I believe the mayor or governor had some sort of bounty on the shark, $100 for whoever kills basically any shark. And it started this frenzy of shark killing. Now, according to a story, a taxidermist named Michael Schischler was on a boat and it was being attacked by a shark, and it was a great white shark. His boat was being bumped and attacked, and he took a broken oar and he basically stabbed this shark to death with his broken oar. They found human remains inside this great white, and the region declared victory. The shark is gone, everything's okay, we can all go back in the water, sort of thing. However, scientists actually looked at the human remains in the shark and deemed it too old, almost like it was actually a body that maybe the shark had consumed, not a fresh kill, if you will. But, people put that aside. Now, there's a lot of theories as to actually what happened in 1916. In terms of area of the region, the shark would have had to have traveled a long way, and you would almost had to have a almost hunger for human flesh, if you will. And unlike other animals like tigers and leopards in recorded history that have killed people and honestly sought out people to kill, this sharks are kind of too stupid. They're a fish. They are known for hunting people. They're not known for seeking out people. And also, great whites themselves are very rare to actually hunt people or kill people. Most of the times, people who are killed by great whites are actually surfers who are they mistake them for sea lions and actually just take them out. But none of these attacks were like that. These were bites. These were honestly behaviors that one would think is a bull shark. And people think that inevitably the shark was one or two bull sharks, maybe more, a shiver of sharks, if you will. Bull sharks, because bull sharks have also been known to swim up water and up creek into fresh water, brackish water into fresh water. In South Africa, they've been known to go quite up, and apparently there was one even found up in the Mississippi River, well up into Illinois, which is unbelievable. That's like hundreds of miles away from the ocean. So the bull sharks have a behavior doing that. They're also just biters. They bite anything and everything. So I think you guys are all kind of getting where I'm going to go here, and I think you might be thinking of a little 1975 movie named Jaws, and yes, I am getting to that. Peter Benchley wrote Jaws. He denies that the Matawan Maneater and the Matawan shark attack incident was based on Jaws. He took influence from that story. He denies that. However, he does say that he actually regrets writing Jaws. Now, he regrets writing Jaws because the Matawan incident and inevitably Jaws in the 70s created an absolute frenzy of shark killing. In fact, after the Matawan incident, they say 50 and even in some places 90% of shark populations declined. Today alone, sharks are obviously kill way less people than people kill sharks. And in the 70s, that fear of sharks, actually, Jaws was such an effective movie, still one of the greatest ever. It again created a frenzy of killing sharks because of the fear of sharks. He regrets writing it because he said he doesn't know about shark behavior. Again, this shark was a vendetta kind of dick. He would go and kill people and sought people out, and that's just not what sharks do. They don't behave like that. That's the Matawan Maneater. I just thought it was an interesting story about how the real Jaws kind of was influenced by a real occurrence of shark attacks. Again, before 1916, shark attacks were so rare, people never had any fear of them. And now it's one of the great fears ever. And shout out to my mother, who has a deep fear of sharks despite living in landlocked Saskatchewan. So yeah, we can talk about that a little, but I kind of want to ask you guys a question. Have you ever had any incident of an animal attacking you or chasing you or doing anything crazy? Sean, you can tell the story because I was there.
The moose, okay. So I guess it was myself, Jason, my brother, and his wife. We went out camping. I believe it was in Cypress Hills, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so a big giant moose came wandering onto our campground. So everyone's like taking pictures, getting up close to this moose, and it just starts like running around and charging. We hid behind Jason's PT Cruiser because you know a moose isn't going to go through that thing. And yeah, we were scared shitless of this moose running around.
When it trotted and then I have it on video a little. It like trotted and like all of a sudden made a V-line towards us. We're just like, the camera immediately cut and we literally ran around the car like hoping it wouldn't come closer.
I'm still trying to think of what the hell were we thinking hiding behind your car.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I was, I guess, a poor college student. By then I was past college, but still, yeah, I had a PT Cruiser. Yeah, not ashamed of it.
Did it say why there was such a sudden influx of these shark attacks? Like, was it just some kind of coincidence or some kind of like just seasonal variation that made these sharks behave differently?
Scientists have kind of concluded that it was basically ideal conditions. It's kind of like the perfect storm. It was really hot summer, which then led to a lot of people swimming. It's kind of like there's so much more people in the water because of the hot summer. It was like a really hot summer in the Jersey Shore. And it's right around July 1st, which is, again, all the people from interior go to the Jersey Shore. It's a big vacation spot for a lot of people. So it was the time of year, has a lot of people. It was a hot summer, so there's just way more people than normal, and therefore it increases the chances of attacks. And I'm of the opinion that it was more than one bull shark. The lore of it was like this killer shark that's like this big monster that's going around hunting people. And I just don't think it's that. I honestly, like the Matawan Maneater, like it's a singular thing. I tend to believe the science of it. I know bull sharks and what they're like. I think it was more than one bull shark, and they just bite. It's just what they do.
I guess, talking to the science of it, I'm guessing because of an event like this, the science community probably got to learn a little bit more then about how the behavior of sharks.
Yeah, it was kind of like, before that, it was just kind of old sea captain tales, right? I mean, if you look at like early renderings of sharks, like some of the drawings of them have like legs and stuff. It's like they didn't know anything about them. Yeah, you should look it up. It's pretty funny. Like they just didn't know anything about sharks. It's just like one of these mysterious sea creatures, right? And for a lot of people, it's just like a fish, right? When the killing happened, like some people were like, literally they were more likely to believe it to be a giant turtle. Like, not even lying. They thought it was a giant turtle.
Really?
It was just so unfathomable. Like, some people believed it was impossible for sharks to attack people, that they would go out in the water, thrash around and try and attract sharks to just make a point, right? And a shark is just going to be like, okay, I'm not interested in that. Like they're not going to go to that. But, if you're just swimming by, like in the murky waters, and bull sharks, what they do is they bite to see what's going on. Like they're just the dumb brute of the shark world.
Yeah,
there's a pretty crazy video of this guy standing with another guy in like, literally bull sharks are swimming around him, and he's kind of trying to prove a point that sharks don't attack unless like they're in a hunt mode or like they smell blood. And like all of a sudden, just as he's making that point, a bull shark just bites the guy's leg and like severs his leg. It's pretty brutal. You should see it. But it's like, it just proved the guy's point wrong, and it just shows that that's what bull sharks are like.
See, I had heard the majority of sharks are actually like that. It's kind of like how we explore the world, with our senses, right? Like we have our hands and our sense of sight and our sense of hearing. Like our sense of smell and taste isn't really that great compared to other things running around. And a shark, all it has really is its mouth and its smell. or its sense of smell. So I've heard that they kind of just bite stuff to see if you're edible, really.
Well, some might do that, but more often than not, like sharks like the great white, for example, don't do that. And they certainly
Okay.
don't bite people. Like they're not known for going up to people and biting them. Like, and you notice like anytime that a great white shark is biting a cage, it's because they're chumming the waters. Like they're literally throwing a buffet of food around and like, but otherwise you could probably swim by a great white, and people have, without any incident, you know? It's just not something that they do. But like a bull shark in comparison does it way more. So yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, there's probably a lot of sharks that do that, but some of these other sharks, like even hammerheads, they generally avoid people. Tiger sharks avoid people. Great whites avoid. Like they're more like timid. Whereas a bull shark is like they just give no Fs at all.
I think it's a good point, Jason, because from my understanding, just like any other attack of an animal, they say even with sharks, fight back. Like they don't want any part of any of that.
Yeah, if you are to get bit by a shark or you are getting attacked by a shark, go for the eyes, they say. It's like one of their reflexes. You just poke their eye out and they'll basically stop. And for crocodiles, it's the tip of their nose for whatever reason. It's very sensitive. And I guess also the eyes. Generally, eyes hurt if you get your eyes gouged.
Yeah, not generally, yeah.
But
You're going a little bit off track, but they say tigers have a really awful gag reflex. So if you could actually manage to, have the balls to do it, they say ram your fist like right down their throat, and they'll back off because it'll make them feel like they're about to throw up.
probably scare the hell out of them. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I think they'd bite your arm off before you have a chance to.
Have you had any encounters with any animals, Shane?
When I was, and I think I've told you this story, Jason. When I was little, I went to a friend's birthday party, and it was out on his farm, and they had chickens. And there was this rooster. He didn't look like a rooster. Like his tail feathers were plucked off. He looked like he had been in a fight. I didn't know rooster behavior really. I just thought it was like this chicken that was like a different color. I was running around, and I admit I deserve what happened to me because I was being an ass. I was terrifying these hens. I saw this this rooster, so I ran up and I tried to scare it, and it like cocked its head sideways, and it just kind of looked at me, and then it spread its wings and it started running at me. And my friend is just killing himself laughing because this thing is chasing me around the yard.
I
got chased by a rooster, and I deserved it.
I've seen my mother and my sister get chased by a mountain goat. Yeah, this is like the not the bighorn sheep, but the goats, I think. I think it was a goat, not a sheep. So like the white one with the black horns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one. I think they got chased by that. I'll have to ask them to corroborate that story, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they got chased. And just earlier this year, I was bird watching with my daughter, and like a deer was stalking me and her. It was a bit uncomfortable. Like kind of rubbing its front hind legs, kind of doing that whole thing like what bulls and angry animals do,
When they fall on the ground.
Well, like, yeah, they just, paw on the ground, kind of lowering their head, snorting a lot. I was like, geez, this is like a rabid deer. I'm out of here. So I had to, like, try to get away quickly. I was, like, actually fearful.
Deer are kind of weird because most people think they charge at you with their, like, antlers if they have them. But they actually they beat the shit out of you with their front legs.
Yes.
And their hooves. Their hooves are very sharp.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, let's go on to the next story. But yeah, that was a little story about how Jaws might have come to be, I suppose.
Nope, that's good, Jason. I just got one thing to add. I think we might need a bigger boat.
We might need a.
Oh,
that is a great movie. I have to say, if that movie was so awesome, because the reason why it's so awesome is that you never really saw the shark until like even the back third of the movie. I think if that movie was made today, you'd see the shark in the trailers. In the first 5 seconds, you'd see the damn shark. You know?
True.
probably.
It's just the cinematography of it and how you don't see it until like it pops its head out of the water, I think. It's just such a great movie. Completely inaccurate to science, but such a great movie.
Well, so is Jurassic Park, but we all love that.
I thought it was real, man. All right, that's it. All right, that's it. We got to go and play some music now. We need to hear from Sean. I'm so devastated. I need a minute.
All right, so I just wanted to talk a little bit kind of about a little bit of war history, but more war when it comes to the use of motorcycles. Obviously, this is a subject that's near and dear to me for a couple of reasons. Those who know me, the obvious is I love my motorcycles and I also love my war history. But also, both my grandparents were veterans of World War II. And specifically, my grandpa Slat actually rode motorcycles during his time in service. But I guess particularly I'm going to more talk about the bikes that were used by North American troops like the Canadians and the U.S. mostly. So motorcycles were used by the military before the First World War, but they were never a military issue until 1915. So it became a military issue because the military kind of found that motorcycles, they could get you from point A to point B the fastest and quickest possible, and they could get through terrain that just other vehicles could not. So their main use was kind of communications and reconnaissance. So it started with the British and the British and the Canadians with the Triumph Model H's during World War I. Then the Americans came in and they bought 20,000 motorcycles from a company that was started by William Harley and brothers Arthur and Walter Davidson, or as we know it, Harley Davidson. So World War I kind of came, gone. A lot of these guys who came back from the war, broken, kind of became adrenaline junkies, didn't really care anymore. So motorcycle racing became really, really popular. And it was a really big deal also for the brands like Harley Davidson and Indian motorcycles. They took pride in these races. And, you know, because if you were a winning bike, you had the fastest, you had the best. You could, you know, put that out there and sell more bikes. One of the more famous teams, obviously, was Harley Davidson. And they had a pet pig mascot. So hence the term hog came along with Harley Davidson bikes. Then came the Depression. A lot of kind of the fringe bike companies started going under, and really there were only the two companies left, Harley and Indian. So when World War II came around, it was all about the war effort for both Harley Davidson and Indian. Both supplied bikes for the Canadian and the Canadian and American troops. And now these soldiers need to be really specially trained, because when you look at it, you're out in the field on your own on a motorcycle. If it breaks down, there's no mechanic to bail you out. You got to know how to strip down this bike, fix it, and get it back going again. And part of that too was because of the war effort. These two companies who were battling basically for a market, had to really work together. So there was a lot of interchangeable parts. They were very, very similar bikes. So during that time, about 90,000 motorcycles were purchased by North American troops during World War II, including Harley-Davidson's 750cc WL model. So there's kind of two different models with the WL, just to kind of give you a background. There's a WLA, which was the American bike, and then the WLC, which was the Canadian bike. I won't bore you into kind of the specifications, but there were kind of minute details differences between the two. What I found kind of really cool, that especially if you're really into mechanics, if you ever get your hands on a World War II era motorcycle, specifically a Harley Davidson, check the VIN number on the engine crankcase. If it has a 42 WLC or a 43 WLC to start that VIN number, there's a good chance it was a military issued Canadian Harley Davidson.
Oh, cool.
So after the war, many servicemen kind of had fond memories of the bikes they rode during their time. And so these World War II era bikes became very sought after, especially among veterans. But the real popular thing to do among those veterans was to customize their bikes to make them lighter, quicker, funner. So they'd start chopping off stuff like the front fender, the crash bars, the big clunky seat. And guess what? They became choppers. As we kind of go along and technology kind of changes, you move into, the Vietnam War. Technology is now starting to change, especially with communications. You're starting to look at more wireless technology, easier ways of doing reconnaissance and communication. So kind of the popularity of using motorcycles in war, it started to drop and more or less became obsolete. But even today, motorcycles still play a pretty important role, especially with the newer bikes now, because they can be made of, composite plastic. Engines now that can be pretty much made to run off any type of fuel, and now are really popular amongst kind of special ops because of their versatility.
Sean, that's awesome. Just in terms of motorbikes now, I just want to touch on it a little bit. Are they because they almost seem like an impracticality in these days, but are they mostly dirt bikes, or what kind of style of bike are they? Because you think of just the terrain, and you don't think of Harley jumping through, riding through no man's land. You know what I mean? The mind doesn't think that way, right? When you think of a Harley, right? They're a road bike.
And it is funny, if you look up kind of these older bikes, it's almost kind of a cross section of the two. It very much has the look of a cruiser, but has more kind of heavy duty tires on it.
Right. Yeah.
And kind of more aggressive tread on them.
Yeah, that's.
Were a lot of them kind of customized too? Obviously, they would have been customized by the manufacturer before they got shipped out to go to war, but I would imagine guys were kind of customizing them on the field too, weren't they? Just kind of whatever they needed as they needed it.
In some ways, yeah. Like I said, with the repairs, you're pretty much on your own. Yeah, there were kind of special features, obviously, that came from the manufacturer. I know there were kind of gun holsters. They did still have saddlebags, leather saddlebags. There wasn't a ton of kind of customizing out in the field, so to speak, for vanity reasons. I think that more came after the wars.
Was it, Sean, was it if you're a serviceman and you're your grandfather and you're given a bike, is it your bike until it's no longer your bike, whether you pass away or whether your bike breaks down? Or is it end of a mission, you return the bike and then you might be using a different bike another day? How does that work?
That's a good question. Because it was military issue, I would guess that it's kind of your bike as long as you're in the military.
Right.
Once
so you come home with your bike, you're maintaining it, you're getting used to it, you're getting the feel of it. It's not like you're jumping in a new bike every mission, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be quite similar to someone say a pilot. You have your plane, that you fly your missions out on. Once you leave the military, that plane has always been property of the military.
So it wouldn't be unheard of if, and I don't have any evidence of this, but as to Shane's point, maybe customizing it a little, maybe put your sweetheart's name on it, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it happened.
Yeah, because like that's what those guys would do, right? To some of their guns or their planes or whatever, right?
Like an endearing thing during both the First and Second World War that you don't really hear about so much in modern wartime. You know, like people were writing letters back home to their parents and to their girlfriends and wives, and other guys were kind of, you know, meeting the love of their life for the first time overseas and like naming their, you know, their Spitfire plane or their motorcycle after her or something. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's one thing I want. Like I might get some feedback from this, but there's a romanticism of the old day wars that doesn't really exist now, and sometimes the media tries to put it as like you see a lot of these videos of soldiers returning home and their dogs are happy and their children are happy, but that's about it. You know, like you don't like you said, Shane. I don't really see that kind of customization or, you know, that romanticist kind of look at war now, because everything is, like I mentioned earlier, it's push of a button, and a lot of warfare is done between missiles and other missiles and drones, and it's become less personal, I suppose.
That's kind of what kind of got me in this too, is a lot of these guys came back, like I said, completely broken. Like they had no care in the world. They went through hell and back. Like those motorcycle races, they were dangerous. Let's go as fast as we can, and if we bail out, like we're talking about 1930s, they didn't have protective gear.
Post World War II, and maybe even post World War One, the sales of motorcycles just jumped, didn't they?
Oh yeah, big time. Especially like I said, post World War II, because that's what guys kind of held on to.
Well, that's that culture, right? I mean, that's that. What do you call that culture? Like, you know, that kind of juke, kind of, you know, grease lightning. You know, like that's totally post World War II kind of culture. It was all about the biker guys and their leather jackets and the the fawns and all that. You know?
Yeah, that kind of 50s
exactly.
greaser look, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like you said, that's right around kind of the end of the war when guys are really wanting to reunite themselves with their bikes.
I think it kind of, the way you kind of mentioned it, Sean, like these guys had what we now refer to as, you know, PTSD. I think getting on a bike back then and tuning it up and customizing it to go as fast as possible, you know, as dangerous as it was a form of therapy, right? Like
it's kind of normalcy for them.
Yeah, like it kind of gave them something familiar and comfortable for them to do without reminding them of the horrors of war. You know, it was kind of like how we come home from a bad day at work and you throw on a movie or you go out for supper with your spouse. Well, I guess you can't really do that right now, but you know what I mean? Like for these guys, it was something different, something that some of us might think is crazy, but to them, it kind of just, for a moment, you could forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I just love too, I was just kind of, this comes out some of the popular terms that we know today that's associated with motorcycles, like, you know, hog and choppers.
Chopper is literally chopping it up, I guess, eh? Chop,
It is.
chopper.
Yeah, chop it to make it as light as possible so it goes faster.
Well, like chopping the tailpipe to make it louder.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, louder, faster. I mean, that's what those are. Those bikes, those road bikes are all about that.
Yeah, it was about having fun.
And I'm much more of a fan of those kind of bikes, the kind of bikes that you ride, Sean, than the street bikes.
Jason, do you remember what we used to say about like guys that we thought were kind of like a douchebag. We used to call them a Ducati.
Well,
you remember
know
that?
Italian
Yeah,
bike
of
Ducati, yeah.
course. Yeah, I mean Ducati obviously a brand of bike, but we just call them Ducatis because I don't want to like stereotype here because like I know our mutual friend Garrett used to ride a road bike. You know, he's not like a bad guy or anything at all, but like a lot of these guys when they would ride these street bikes, they would just speed and just they were so reckless and just jackasses on the road like. And they're still like that. And there's some guy on YouTube, like he's really popular on YouTube, and he's kind of he's just known for being kind of a douche. Like he flips people off, and like he finds bad people driving and stuff. And a lot of times, a lot of drivers are at fault. But the way he reacts and acts, and he's just such a clown. It's like can't expect people. Like sometimes when you're going so fast, it's hard to see these people in your mirrors. Like a lot of them die because they go so fast and the guy changes lanes and he doesn't even see them. And at least the big loud Harleys, they're at least loud and we can see them coming. And yeah, some of them drive like dicks too, but it's almost like they're designed to not be so fast because they're more of a comfort and a long leisure kind of ride. And I find them, in my personal experience, to be less jerks on the roads.
Well, like you said it, and I will stand by it till the day I die. For people who bitch and complain about loud bikes, they save lives. Period.
I mean, yeah, they're loud and annoying, and like, when they come, there's some guy who has one and he lives down the road, and he'll go really fast down the street. I want to slap him, but at least we'd be able to hear him coming.
Well, exactly. At least it makes you look to, oh crap, there's a bike nearby. I better pay attention.
But he shouldn't be going like 70 down our road. He's a clown.
Still need to be a douchebag about it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with guys that have like a souped up jalopy or something, or a truck with a lift on it. Like, you guys both grew up in Kendersley. Like, you couldn't even count on both hands the amount of guys that have like this lift kit on their big diesel truck, and it just stinks and it's loud and they floor it every time the light turns green, and it's just this big cloud of black smoke, and they don't realize like you're a fucking tool for doing that.
So true.
Like,
I was gonna say, I shouldn't speak too loudly because I got a custom truck, but
yeah, but you're not like guy who's like rolling coal. Have you ever heard of rolling coal? These guys, put these pipes on that produce black smoke just to like own the libs or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they just like they're like literally vindictive dicks, and like they literally put black smoke on people. Like, I mean, like that's what you do for a hobby. Like, what a loser. And then the truck nuts, like
I can't stand
I was just about to say that, hanging a pair of nuts off the back of your truck.
Compensating a bit.
Yeah, no class, no dignity, like just pure douche.
And you know what the thing is that a lot of guys in the oil patch have trucks like that too. And one, it's expensive. If you get a truck you can get a truck customized like that at the dealership. And I'll give you an example, like the new Ford F-150s.
Would you like the douchebag package, sir?
You could totally get something like that. It's not called the douchebag package, but it should be. But like a new Ford, like a new 2020 Ford truck costs almost $100,000.
Yeah.
And you can get it customized, and by the time you're said and done, I shit you not, you're looking at probably close to $200,000.
All right, guys. Well, this was a great one. This was an extended pod, I think. We kind of went all over the place, didn't we?
A lot of good conversations, though.
I like how every single one of them went off the rails at the end.
This is just a Three Tales Told Off the Rails edition. It's our last episode before, or I guess our penultimate episode before our ending episode of the season, which is episode 10. So that's our last episode of the season. That's next. So I guess We got one left, and then we're done for the season, so that'll be interesting. But shall we just sign her off here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so, eh?
All right, guys. Well, this is Jason out here in Calgary.
I'm Shane out here in Etonia.
And Sean out here in Marquis.
And you just heard Three Tales Told, slightly off the rails.
How you gonna try to be someone when the people can't see you? How you gonna try to open those doors?
Hey guys, do you know we're on the interweb now?
What? Really?
Yeah, facebook.com/3talestold. You can get everything there. You can message us, links to our website, email, the whole 9 yards, guys.
threetalestold@gmail.com or facebook.com/threetalestold. See ya.